Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. In today's video, we'll be taking a look at the 2024 presidential election in Georgia and analyzing it in depth the way we've done for three previous states, those being North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And in today's video, we'll be doing Georgia. So Georgia, as I'm sure most of you are aware, did vote for Joe Biden in 2020. It was very close, closest state by percentage, second closest by raw vote total. And it's going to be another nail-biter in this state come 2024. So let's just talk about the potential consequences of a Trump victory in Georgia. So let's say Trump does indeed flip Georgia. That would open up many paths to the presidency. I would say if he wins Georgia, he probably wins North Carolina. And if he manages to win North Carolina, he can win with Pennsylvania directly, or he could just take two of these states, which would ideally be for him, Arizona and Wisconsin. Nevada in this case isn't super helpful because he could still win, let's say, Wisconsin and Nevada, and he could still fall short. He'd still need one of these other states, but Nevada, obviously, he'd like to have in his column. So I would say from Georgia, when he wins Georgia, he probably wins North Carolina too. From there, I think his best state would probably be Wisconsin and then Pennsylvania, and that would get him past the finish line. But all that really matters here is getting to 270 no matter how he does it. So Georgia, if he could have it back, would be huge. Now, if Biden wins Georgia, he's knocking on the door already because he would only need a North Carolina or a Pennsylvania or an Arizona plus one other state. So he would be very close, and Georgia is a state that has historically been pretty Republican-leaning, so Republicans are still kind of finding a way to deal with it being in the Democratic coalition, and it obviously was probably the most impressive victory of 2024 Joe Biden. It was the only state that he won that I did not expect him to win. I had every state predicted correctly, so I'm secretly still a little mad at Georgia for ruining my perfect election prediction, but that's okay. So we're going to talk about the election results from 2020. It was obviously very close, and the reason Biden was able to win it, despite Clinton having lost it by 5% in 2016, was the Atlanta metro area. That's really what it was. And as you can see, all these blue lines, these are all massive swings to the left in the Atlanta area. And Biden, specifically in the suburbs, did very well. So Gwinnett County voted for Mitt Romney by, I believe, 9%. I think it voted for Clinton by 10. Well, we're about to see. Actually, no, it voted for her by, a little under 10. And Biden did 12% better than her en route to a 18-point victory. And that was a huge showing because Gwinnett's a very big county. As you can see, cast 400,000 votes. And we saw similar things in Newton and Henry County, which are some light blue counties in the south. Newton, 9-point swing. Henry, 16-point swing, which is pretty insane. And then in the north suburbs, which are still red, these are more exurbs, I guess you could say, but they're still in the metro area, Cherokee and Forsyth counties. These are mostly white. They haven't really diversified to the extent of these other counties in the south, but they did trend towards Joe Biden. Cherokee, 10%, Forsyth, 14%. And that is the swing with educated white voters. So if we look at the educated vote in 2016, we saw college graduates in Georgia backed Clinton by 1%, which is a pretty solid showing. But in 2020, in Georgia, college graduates backed Biden by 15. So that's a 14-point swing in one state. And between just 4 years, really one election cycle, that's pretty impressive. So those are the swings that really helped Biden win Georgia. And obviously, he did well in some other parts of the state, too. You know, he did better in Augusta. He did pretty well in Savannah as well. But overall, the margins he got were made possible because of the Atlanta metro area and because of the swings he saw in the suburbs. He also got a pretty good turnout from DeKalb and Fulton, which are somewhere in here. I am going to have to find it at some point. I don't know if I'll be able to find it until I zoom in, but they're right here. I wanted to show the swing, but it's kind of difficult for me to do that. But either way, Fulton and DeKalb, Atlanta's kind of cut in half between these two counties, but it doesn't really matter. In Fulton, Biden netted 243,000 votes, and in DeKalb, Biden netted 250,000 votes. So these counties are both very important for Democrats. They've been winning them for a while, but Biden really maxed out the margins here. So that is obviously huge for him, and he has to do that again if he's going to win it. Now, for Trump, from the Trump angle, Trump knows he's going to perform poorly in the suburbs. When you have these counties that swing 10 points against you, or if not more, in just 4 years, you're not going to be able to win them back. And that's unfortunate for Trump. It really takes away his upside in Georgia, but he's going to have to deal with that. So let's just assume these counties swing left. Biden's already probably ahead in Georgia by 3 or 4 points at that point, so Trump's going to have to make this up in other places. So I'd say the best area for him to do that's probably North Georgia, which did trend left in 2020, but not to the extent of, obviously, the Atlanta metro. And there are some areas up here that I think are kind of open for Republicans, right? Like you see Whitfield County, that's where Dalton is. It's one of the more bigger suburban or bigger rural counties in the north. I think Trump can maybe crack 75 there in a best case scenario for him. And he would probably improve in some of these other smaller counties. Don't mean too much, but again, every 1,000 votes you're netting from these counties, when you add them all up, it's a pretty significant amount. So that would help Trump. I would also say that he can do better in the southern part of the state. These rural areas were pretty stagnant in 2020. I think this kind of corridor between the Florida border and the South Carolina border, that could be pretty good for Trump. And then Savannah, that's Chatham County, voted for Biden by a little under 20%. If maybe Trump narrows it to 15, that would be huge for him. Maybe he improves with black voters. The county did swing left, so it could be difficult for him, but he'd have to find a way to improve with black voters. Georgia's a state that in 2020, 32% of the electorate, or no, I think 29% of the electorate was black, which is a pretty significant portion. And so Trump's going to have to improve with those voters, at least to a lesser extent. And that's going to be difficult. And I think for Republicans, it's been difficult to improve with black voters. But if he wants to improve in areas like Savannah, Chatham County, I believe, is actually plurality, if not majority, black. Trump's going to have to do well there. So that's going to be the first thing. But the main, I would say the best part of Georgia for Republicans is the center. And as you can see, they actually did get some pretty good swings in 2020. Burke County flipped. Hillary Clinton won it by 2%. Trump won it by 2%. So it is certainly kind of an example. It's small, but it's an example of an area in Georgia that is improving for Republicans. It's plurality black, and it's just really losing population, which is why it's trending towards Republicans. And I would say decreased black turnout would help Trump in Georgia. Obviously, there's no way he can decrease turnout legally, but if Democrats continue to see lower turnout in these counties between Augusta and Columbus, that could be a bit of a problem for them. These areas aren't as big as the Atlanta metro area, so they don't have as big of an impact on the way the state votes, but it could be a problem for them. So that's something to keep in mind. I would say for Trump, he's going to have to do really well in these areas. Muskogee County, that's where Columbus is. He'd have to stop the bleeding there, just really have to improve in these counties that are kind of going to add up to a couple 100,000 votes in the center of Georgia. So that's kind of the geographic path. Let's talk about the exit polls. In 2016, Trump did win Georgia, but I think the best way to look at a Republican victory in Georgia is the governor's race from last year. So Brian Kemp did win this race. He was the incumbent, so he had some benefits because he did win as the incumbent, but he's still a decent example of what to do as a Republican in Georgia. So he beat Stacey Abrams by 7.5 points, which is a very impressive victory. To be fair, turnout favored Republicans by like 5%, so he probably would have won by 3 or maybe 2 if he was on the ballot in 2020 or 2021 in the runoff, but that's all right. It's still a pretty impressive victory. He still would have won. And he did this because, like I said, he improved. You look at Burke County, he won by 11. Trump only won that by 2. These counties in the center of the state, right? Like Muskogee County, which I mentioned, Kemp came within 19 of winning it. Trump lost it by 24. So he did pretty well I can't find my tab, but he did pretty well in these areas that I've been highlighting. And he also stopped the bleeding in the Atlanta suburbs. He didn't win them back, but he did perform pretty well. And he actually did pretty well in Cobb County, but he did all right in these suburban counties outside of Atlanta. He did outperform Trump in most of them, to his credit. But I think for Trump is going to have a really hard time there. So I think he makes it up with getting kind of Kemp margins in the center of the state, maybe improving in areas like Chatham County, like I mentioned. So that's the path for Trump, really. He doesn't have to win by 8 the way Kemp did, but maybe he wins by 1 or 2. So in terms of exit polling, I do want to look at that. I talked about education, but let's look at race. So in 2020, like I said, 29% of voters were black, and that obviously is a little below average. Democrats have historically done well in Georgia when it's over 30%. In 2022, it was 28%, so it did decrease. But usually Democrats win when it's above 30%. So Trump can win an electorate that's 29% black. He'd like it to be 27%, maybe 27.5%. That's kind of the sweet spot for Republicans because it means the white voters, when black voters go down as a share of the electorate, white voters go up. So that is really beneficial to Republicans. But obviously there's no way to decrease black turnout. You can't do that. So for Donald Trump, he's going to have to either improve with black voters or he's going to have to really supercharge white turnout. So White voters in 2020 backed Trump by 39. In 2016, Trump also did pretty well with white voters. He won white voters by 54. So they did swing left, but he still won them. And they actually did make up in 2020, they did make up a larger share of the electorate, which kind of bolstered him statewide. But either way, he lost them by 39, or he won them by 39 in 2020, won them by 54 in 2016. That, to me, is a pretty significant swing that maybe isn't talked about as much, but still pretty important. So Trump, if he wants to win back Georgia, he's going to have to really, really turn the clock back with white voters, maybe not in the suburbs, but maybe in these rural areas. So that's kind of where Trump has to win Georgia. I think that's where it comes from, white voters in rural areas. And they're already pretty Republican. That's the problem they have, is that there's not a lot of areas in Georgia where the Republicans can increase their vote shares because they're losing in Atlanta. And outside of that, there's not a ton of votes left. So it's a difficult path. I would say Biden's definitely favored to win Georgia, but Trump can win it back. And I think that the strategy I've talked about in this video, supercharging rural white turnout, maybe doing marginally better with black voters or stopping the bleeding in the suburbs, they're all difficult things to do, but he's going to have to do that. So thanks for watching. Again, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you all in the next one.